This information you are about to hear and perhaps view, these are not necessarily the thoughts or the ideas of Gary C.Clement or the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties this story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content may not be owned by or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, G2 Network Media, or any other company we are affiliated with, and this information is strictly the opinion of those being interviewed. This content is for information purposes only, and although we may make reference to various news stories, we share our own independent beliefs about the content and provide our own opinions. Please enjoy the information. Haard News, hosted by Gary C.Clement. Today's news is made up of so many different issues, and it's hard to keep up. But we all know it's important to keep law enforcement in the community and society, as many in America have a problem doing the right thing. Growing up, my mother always said it's easy to do right, but so many people choose wrong, and once you get in trouble, it's very hard to get out of it. Haard News will tackle all issues that break the barriers of justice for all, freedom for all, and simply a good and strong meaning of democracy for all. The show covers politics, crime, gun violence in our communities, and will introduce guests who have a personal stake in these issues. So without further ado, please enjoy this week of Haard News, hosted by Gary C. Clement. Hello, my name is Gary C. Clement, and welcome to Haard News. The topics of discussion in this episode are: number 1, the lack of affordable housing in surrounding areas. Number 2, gun violence taking over our community. Number 3, programs to curb young people from getting in trouble. The city of Durham, North Carolina has a high rate of shootings, murder, housing prices going through the roof, and young people searching for opportunities that budgeting does not support. As a former judge, Mayor Elaine Oneil was the first Afro-American female mayor for Durham, North Carolina. And in taking on this responsibility, I'm sure it's been a challenge, but she's had years of experience in government to make her well-equipped to handle the role. News broke recently that she will not seek re-election, and she's here today with us to talk about this and many other issues. Good morning, Miss Mayor. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. And Elaine is just fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Elaine is fine, man.
Okay. So first of all, Miss Elaine, please tell us about your background coming into the office of mayor.
Well, I've never lived outside of Durham, so I've been educated, trained. I worked at the law school that I later headed as a child. My first jobs were with Durham Parks and Recreation. So I am a product of our city, and so the opportunities that I had growing up led me into public life. So I am a two-time grad of Central with a math degree and a law degree. After that, I went into private practice for a very short time, was introduced to politics really at another level by attorney Billy Marsh, who's a civil rights attorney that was from the West End like I was. And he got me involved in the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. And from there, after a period of time, I ran for judge and did that for about 25 years at the district court and superior court level. Retired from that. Our law school needed some help with accreditation issues. So I was asked to come and lead us through that process. And we are accredited now for the next 10 years, thank God, for NCCU School of Law. And after that, I was going to retire again to head to the beach, had my house all packed up. And I am a Christian, and God sent some people to say, maybe you should try to run for mayor, and I did. So here we are.
I see. Okay. So as the first Afro-American female to be elected, as a mayor in Durham, what was your greatest fear coming into the job?
Well, there's always, the transitional fear when you have change. That's just the nature of human beings. Specifically to this job, it was how much I would be able to accomplish through working with others in some of the issues that I've seen for the last 20, 25 years as a judge. So how do you get in and try to change that? And so that was my greatest kind of fear going in, was would I even be able to do that? And then what kind of expectations should I as a person have around that, and what should the community has as a reasonable expectations of me. So all of those things that go into when human being changes careers, but this is just a real public one. So that makes a difference too.
I see. Okay. And just in doing some research, it seems as if, one thing that I found was says is with the crime rate of 42%, or how could you say, with a crime rate of 42 per 1,000 residents, Durham, North Carolina is one of the highest crime rates in America compared to communities of all sizes, from the smallest towns to the very biggest cities. How does that make you feel as a mayor coming into a situation like this?
Not good at all. Not good at all. You can't feel good when you hear about stats, but having been a math major as well, I understand how numbers can be deployed in ways that makes it seem like we are worse than anybody else. And that is definitely not the case. I love my city. I have been in this area all of my career in terms of the judiciary and in the legal arena, and now in public service in this vein. And I can absolutely tell you that though there are other cities who are suffering just as much. I was on a call on yesterday with 5 other North Carolina mayors. So if you talk to the mayors in Winston or Greensboro, they'll tell you that their homicide rates are up. Mm-hmm. Crime is up all across America, and that's the reality. It's not just centered in Durham, North Carolina. And yes, we have some bad stats. Nobody wants to hear those. But the reality is we have a crime problem everywhere, mm-hmm. not just in Durham.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Right. So what, I guess, when you look at the problem, or look at, the situation, would you say that it's Afro-Americans that are doing most of these problems, that are causing most of these problems, or, Caucasians or Mexicans, or, just where is all this coming from?
Well, America was built pretty much out of violence. So let us not forget that we did not walk over here saying that we wanted to come, mm-hmm. right? So we were enslaved. That in itself is violence. The Indians, our Native Americans, they were almost killed completely out, right? Mm-hmm. So let us not forget that population, which is so easily done for a lot of people, which is heinous, but they were almost wiped out as a people. Okay. Mm-hmm. So America was built on violence. So this idea of just where did it come from and how did it all start and who did it, that is in my opinion, not a true narrative of where we are as a country. What has happened in the last 20 some years, 15 years is the release of all of these firearms into these communities that are already plagued with poverty issues. And a lot of poverty issues can create crimes because people have to find a way to make a living, mm-hmm. right? So if you're not allowed into middle class society, which is where a lot of us sit these days because of jobs or whatever, and our parents are able to kind of propel us into that middle class arena, or you maybe have done it on your own. I certainly did not. But, a lot of people were left out of that. And so when you leave a large population of people behind without the ability to get decent housing and be able to have a decent life, they have to survive. And so crime increases, right? Yes, so, and then you put those weapons out there in the hands of people who are desperately, a lot of them are desperate. And then you have to also think about people who have mental health issues. When we did the closing of Camp Butner and all of these state facilities around, people then flooded the jails who should have probably been receiving mental health services. And so you have that population of folks out there. So a lot of it is need-based. I try not to cast disparaging remarks on any race. I do hate it that we kill each other. We seem to find it so easy to kill each other, and nobody's keeping a track of those stats. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that rooted in poverty and contacts with the criminal justice system, and where you leave people like they don't have a choice because we don't have any avenues for them to get out.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Right. Wow. Wow. Okay. Cool. Yes. So I guess as a judge, could you tell us some of your responsibilities that you were actually part of or whatnot, in
Oh
that position?
man. Yes, I can. I have to be honest with you. After about 25 years of doing that, my health started to have some. My health took some shots from that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So because you really deal with human drama up front, and a lot of instances is bad, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I have tried murder cases. I have been involved in cases involving the very worst of human behavior towards children, towards our elders, towards each other. So I was a trial judge, so I tried a lot of cases, and I never tried a death penalty case in terms of for killing, but when you terminate somebody's parental rights, in my mind, that is a death sentence for that person's parental rights and that child. So it's a lot that goes on in that arena, and that's one of the reasons why I felt like I wanted to be on the other end, because the court system is very reactive.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
was hoping to get into this arena to take that information that I learned over there and put it in a proactive arena. That didn't quite work out as simplistic. It's not quite that simple, but that was the idea, was to try to take that experience and see if we could be on the other end and try to combat and put in places and put in things that could help rather than hurt.
I see. I see. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So during your time as mayor, just tell us about some of the different programs that you were actually able to create and make available to people that need it.
Well, one of the things that I have come to realize that it's not a program
Hmm.
that you can create. You have to begin to change a culture and begin to change systemic issues so that it can be um, what I call, you have to begin to address the systemic issues so that when your nonprofit arena comes into with programs, they can be able to interact with your government to the extent that they can expand to
Yes, ma'am.
touch more people,
Hmm.
right? Government does not, the city is brick and mortar. That's what we kind of say. We deal with brick and mortar. So we are your streets. We are your infrastructure. We are your collectors of your trash. We make sure that when you turn on the faucet in your house, your water comes on and it's safe to drink. So we don't have a lot of space that we interact with the public um, on where you provide direct programming services. Your county commissioners are your human service issue, the human services providers. They have public health, the Department of Social Services, they fund the schools, so they're more programming. However, because of the way that our what I call our invisible folk have been left out of all this economic boom, we've had to step in and partner with people and agencies to do human services. So when we had our COVID money, we gave out about 22 million to nonprofits to help them to expand the services that they were doing.
Hmm.
I have also been, and we're still in the middle of a initiative with Harvard Bloomberg. We're one of about 43 cities across the world. We're a legacy city where they've been in with us about a year, and they've been doing some work with us on the barriers that our people are facing when they're coming from the criminal justice system, and not just prison. People always want to talk about just people returning from prison. Well, a lot of people haven't been to prison who are still taxed with an F, or felon, or misdemeanor, who still cannot find housing or sign a lease because of that. So
Hmm.
we are still looking at those barriers so that the city can then take a further dive and see how do we begin to interact with that. Also in a 3 to 5 year grant process with the Mellon Trust called the PERT, and I can't tell you what it's standing for, but in essence, we have community tables going on around now to try to come up again with some of these systemic issues that are facing folks who are pretty much in poverty and dealing with a lot of issues. We are one of 4 cities that hope to receive a $5 million grant to delve down in that. So I am trying to look at, I'm used to working in systems and trying to figure out the barriers in those systems that cause some of these things to happen. And that's not the sexy work. You know, I can go out and say, oh, I'll put a program together and that's not sexy work either, but that's not my area of expertise. Mm-hmm. My area of expertise is trying to look at systems and then determine the groundwork on how you do systemic change. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time. So you won't see that. That's not going to be advertised because that doesn't garner a headline that we're actually, trying to dig in barriers and see how the government is interacting in that space. But that's where I see a lot of the work that needs to be done if government is going to be able to respond effectively to the needs in our community in a timely way, because a lot of times what has happened, government moves so slow. We are reactive and then we move slow. Okay, it's going to take us 5 to 10 years to build housing. Yeah. But what we're going to do about the urgency of now?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. We have $44 million out there. We have a housing grant, $95 million, one of the biggest. But and so we're building. But what are you going to do about people that don't have a place to sleep now?
Right.
Right now, today.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And how do we get the government to respond to that immediately? And that's the hard part. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm working in that vein.
I see. Okay, great. Okay. So as far as, just, I guess you could say, when I say programs, then when to create or to have a program for young people, like you said, that come out of jail or, some kind of rehabilitation, what do you want to see in place that's not there?
Well, that's a good question. I like that question because I started about 10, 15 years ago in Portland, Oregon, right? Mm-hmm. And Portland had a lot of issues lately, but we took a trip out there in about 10 to 15 years ago and to see their juvenile justice system that they had put together. And really a partnership between schools, their nonprofits, and their governments. And, the government is pretty much aligned. It's in alignment. It is a system. Right? Mm-hmm. So you can pretty much count on that. On your nonprofit arena, though, sometimes they're not aligned. A lot of times people are doing great work around, but they can't scale it. And a lot of times, sometimes, they have the skill set to do the programming, but the technical piece gets hard because it's hard to get a nonprofit up and running on that technical side. Mm-hmm. So they have been able to put together a system where they work so closely together that they were able to, whenever they saw like an increase in pregnancy, teen pregnancy, or increase in that and the other, their nonprofit community could respond, and create programming to do that if they didn't have it already already there, or just they were able to react. They also will have a 1-800 number, something very simple, but we don't have it, where kids could call and they could be placed in the system and assessed within 72 hours and stabilized. That's the kind of response that you need, that I'd like to see. But it takes a lot to be able to get those governments working together, get your nonprofits working together, and that happens over years, right? So that's where I'm trying to start, or what I've hoped to try to start is get us some baseline information from a couple of different arenas that we have, be able to pull that information together to start to build out a system that is responsive to our young people. In the meantime, we still have to fund those because you got the urgency of now. So you have these two things you have to balance. So that's why we still have to push money into our nonprofits so that they can scale and do the work. And we're, adding some other things. I think we put in an amount for an apprenticeship that will begin in the city. So the city is coming because we've had to. That seems to be, and this was before me, moving towards helping more in the community, in the human services arena, because the problems are just too great for one part of government to handle. We got to all be in it together. So, and I'm glad to see that movement is happening. I've had a great relationship with our chair of our Durham County Commissioners, and we've been able to do a lot of this work together.
Yes, ma'am. Very good. Ron, do you have any questions?
Yeah, well, I would like to make a comment too. It seems like the mayor has a great vision for the future of Durham, and I'm sure that she gets a lot of information when she has to deal with people that come before her, and they probably state some of their conditions that contributed toward why they did what they did, but. The root. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
Yeah. I guess you have to get to the root causes, and I think the mayor she expressed the root a lot of causes, because when people don't get the necessary things that they need with the housing, with the employment, with the social programs, then that's going to contribute to people turning into going in a different direction.
Absolutely.
So everybody wants solutions. You know, we can always talk about the problem, but what are the solutions? You know, and of course, you may also spoke of how to remedy some of these problems, but then you're going to need the government help. And it seems to me that with the climate that we have today, with the way the government is divided, and seemingly when you have leadership and certain governments that are targeting Black institutions without not allowing them to have a Black history, or tearing down every positive things that a lot of Black folks are doing, that goes against the grain. So it's an uphill. I see it as an uphill battle, but one of the things I thought about, even though the mayor is very observant and she sees these things, but when you have groups that will go out and actually talk to, especially the people who have been incarcerated, and I would sit and ask them, now what would have made a difference in your life to make you not have done this? I mean, but of course, it's pretty obvious what's going on all over the country. When you start cutting out these social programs, when you're doing the things that's happening down there, what DeSantis is doing, and you have certain laws passed, that really is an uphill battle. But like I said, getting to the solutions, I guess you got to get to the causes, and if you can one little bit at a time get rid of some of the causes or attack,
Right.
Well,
it's not rocket science. Let me assure you, it's all human beings. We trying to live a journey called life, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have reasonable expectations as humans that you're going to be able to make a living, you're going to love, you're going to have children, not have children, but you're going to be able to walk this journey called life, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Without a lot of drama. That's what you hope. We know that's not reality, but there are some basic things that we need to be able to expect, and that is a way to do that, to make a life so that you can live, work, and play. However, being a people who are an oppressed people, we have not gotten over that.
Yes, ma'am.
And we never will. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of us who've been able to make our way. However, it's not a lot of us who have, right?
Yes,
There's still a lot of us who are still struggling. The one thing that I know that has worked with everybody that I have come in contact with over 25 years in the criminal justice system, I have, mind you, run into, when I was on the bench, I ran into very few people who I would say were just straight killers. It was just not that way. And people like to say that. There were reasons, as you said, why they did that. But the one thing to make a difference is a loving person, a mentor. They make all the difference in a child's life. And we have gotten, as Black people, we're scared of our own in a lot of instances. So you have a very few people who are willing to go into angle. And I've been trying to tell people, you got to do something. If you're looking for your government to save you, well, when does that ever happen in the United States of America for black people?
Right.
Come on, let's be real, man. So you think in 2023, all of a sudden they're going to do everything? No, it's not going to happen. And even when we sit on a Democratic city council, and that's been a hot mess. You've seen that.
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
All Democrats or all people of color.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
But
ma'am.
Judge, you just mentioned something that really kind of touched me when you said we're still suffering from some of the things that happened in the past. I'm in the process of reading this book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Joy DeGruy, and she's talking about the same thing that you just mentioned. It's interesting you said that, but a lot of us are, I think, suffering from this syndrome, and not only that, with the new attitudes of, like, you have some of these rappers who now have a culture out there that's putting a culture out there that's introducing to our youth that is very negative, But so it's an uphill battle for.
It is, but you know what? But it's strange to me because everybody. I don't know nobody that don't love music, so so a lot of people not out here making that kind of music,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
they're not being, they're not the ones being pushed out front for our community,
Right.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there are some things I think that we have to own. People are never going to come to the rescue of people who don't want to rescue themselves.
That's true.
Mhm.
And in other words, we're going to have to be the ones, and that's why I've tried to stand in this space to say, okay, I could have stayed at home. I can be retired. This is a part-time job, and I'm working 8 hours a week, and basically for very little money and very little thanks. You get all the headaches now and all that, and people
Right.
cuss you out just about every day. But I realized, too, that this community trained me. They gave me a skill set, and I am obligated to go back in that community and try to help.
Yes, ma'am.
I
Right.
got to take that knowledge and try to help
That's
and mentor. And we'll sit back and say, well, government ain't doing this. But when have they ever? So stop saying that. That ain't even realistic. That's
Right.
not going to happen. We need our people
Right.
to come together and stop doing what we've always done. In the civil rights movement, we found a way to come together and get some things done. Look like as soon as integration hit, everybody got on their own. And they said, we just gonna make it on ourselves. No, we
Right.
cannot.
Right.
We are still have to operate together. We cannot afford to do that. We're losing too many of our young people when we don't. You go to church and everybody's the same class. That's the problem.
Yes, ma'am. Right.
I mean, you ain't let nobody in but people in your neighborhood or in your class.
Right.
It shouldn't look like a country club.
Yes, ma'am.
It should be a place where people go to get help, just
Right.
like they did in the 60s. So I could go on and on. I could talk with y'all all day because it sounds like that you all know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just wish that we could have some people. Can you give an hour a week? Can you give 2 hours a week? And go buy some books to give to these kids over in their neighborhoods. You don't have to be out front, but you gotta do something other than just talk about it. We need action.
Right.
They're
Yes,
dying
ma'am.
out there.
Right. And I see, and actually, because of your background being a mayor as well as a judge, I see you basically being a part of a classroom setting or whatnot on, say, for instance, like a monthly basis where you bring kids in and explain a lot of these things or whatnot to them. What does that sound like to you?
That sounds great. But I was telling, I'm always a mentor. I picked up 2 mentees this week. We've got to do that part well. I'm trying to pull people into this political arena because, it turns people off the way that it just kind of cuts you up and dice you. So that's real hard for young people to say, come on in here and do it and you get a little money. But I'm also want to help train up that new generation of politicians to not do what they're seeing now. So I am always at somebody's school. I was over at Rogers Herd. That's my middle school. Junior high school, a couple of before they got out, talking to the queens over there. So I always try to do that. I do want to do it more formally, probably though at the college and the graduate level, because at that point I want to begin to train them and get them ready to enter into public service. It's nothing like public service. It's not a lot of money in it, but a lot of times you have to do things for because it's the right thing to do, and money then will follow.
Yes, ma'am.
I have not enjoyed a whole lot of money. I'm still very much living, a standard middle class life, not a big house, not no whole lot of cars, but it's a good life. Mm-hmm. And I just try to think about all the lives that I can touch. So I want to encourage your listeners, please give somebody a helping hand. That's how we win. You cannot expect these politicians, myself included, to go out here and change the world. It's not going to happen that way, but we can change it together, especially for our people.
Okay. And before we go here, you're not seeking re-election. Why did you make that decision? And what's coming next?
A couple of things, a couple of reasons why. A lot of it personal. My oldest brother, I'm in a very tight-knit family. I'm a baby girl. My oldest brother got sick, and he was still working at 72 on the job, chasing kids as an assistant principal, right? Mm-hmm. And so after he got sick, that kind of changed the life of my family. And so he's still in the hospital. And so, like I said, my family, of course, comes first. And we could not see running a campaign while my oldest brother has been so ill. On top of that, I'm getting married.
Okay. Wonderful.
I'm married and get married in December. He's retired. I'm retired. And so we can kind of do some things different. And at 61, you want to do something different, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
And the other part is I'm not a public person a lot. And this has taken its toll on me, being in this public arena. This brand of politics, I have to tell you, is very nasty. Mm-hmm. And I'm not used to that, right? I'm not used to your colleagues coming after you. I'm not used to, you having to fight within City Hall. I'm just not used to that kind of stuff, and then being ineffective in trying to maneuver that conversation. Mm-hmm. I got to go where I can see some wins while these babies are out here dying, because I'm getting older too. So my skill set tells me, and my God told me, you can be released from this assignment because I have some other stuff that I want you to do, that where you can actually touch these young people in a way that will make a difference without you going downhill fast because you can't sleep at night and you're crying because these folks is like, what in the world are they doing in this arena? Mm-hmm. So I've decided that this brand of politics is not for me at this time in my life. I am going to stay in Durham. I am going to be out there working in the community. So stay tuned. I'm just doing it. I'm fighting. I'm still fighting. Yes, but ma'am. I won't fight where it's a dirty fight like that. And that's the dirty fight right in that. That could be, that's, not my space. Right. So okay. I know when to fold it, and I'm moving on to something else. Haven't really decided what, but it's going to be more dealing with systemic issues and trying to make sure that I'm mentoring young people in a way that I can convince them to stand in this space.
We really do appreciate our guest who participated in this episode, and we hope you learned something that will bless your day and your life. For all who are interested in learning more about the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, please visit www.amazon.com and order my book, The Gary Clement Radio Show, When Strong Afro-American Men and Women Stand Up. It covers everything about us and features a variety of Afro-American personalities who speak out about the importance of education and literacy in the Black community. Well, we thank you for tuning into our podcast. Please send us your email address so we can contact you when we have new releases and new episodes and new projects as well. You can reach us at gccpresents@yahoo.com. And also, if you're interested in submitting any materials or want to get in touch with us, please do so by simply sending an email to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, presents@yahoo.com. So until next time, do take care. And this is a G-Tube Network Media production.